family comes from all over Europe. Although they speak different languages and have different traditions, my family has always accepted one another and decided to pass on their passions to everyone they meet. The result of this project, for me, is a deeper understanding of what it means to be put in a place for a reason. In 1650, Josiah Franklin fled from England because of religious persecution. He was a Puritan. The 1650s were difficult times for England due to the long and short parliaments and Pride's Purge. Josiah's son, James, is orally the older brother of Benjamin Franklin, although written history does not agree. James was well established in the Massachusetts colony in 1683, the year his first son, John Franklin, was born. The next 5 generations stayed in the Massachusetts area. Samuel Franklin, my great-great-great-grandfather, fought in the 1858 Battle of Gettysburg in the Union Army 77th Infantry. In battle, he obtained a lung wound, and the doctors suggested that he move west for his health. Many soldiers injured during the Civil War were told to relocate west for their health. He relocated to Rochester, Minnesota, marrying Isabel Colson, who had come over from Lincolnshire, England, in 1855. He became a wheelwright and buggy maker. Samuel's son was named Joseph Freeman Franklin, my great-great-grandfather. Joseph Franklin began preaching in Britt, Iowa at the age of 14 in the Methodist Church in the 1890s, this being during the time of the Third Great Awakening. He started 23 Methodist churches in his lifetime, from Iowa to Wisconsin to South Dakota, Oregon, and finally California, because of his affiliation with the Methodist Church. August 1900, Joseph Freeman Franklin married Ethel Vivian Combs. In 1906, Joseph and Ethel Vivian moved to Bruce, Wisconsin, 42 years prior to the Button family, and built the Methodist Church that is still an active church only blocks away from where my grandmother currently lives. In 1918, Joseph Franklin was among the 675,000 Americans hit with the first ever H1N1 flu pandemic. Due to the damage done to his heart, the Methodist Board continued to move his family west until they arrived in 1926 in San Miguel, California. When Joseph died in 1927, his wife, Isabel, took over his position in the church, finally moving the family to Big Pine, California. The family continues to live in the same area. This is where my mother was born and raised. One story passed down through the Franklins is of one night Hilda and Harold Joseph Franklin were lying in bed and they heard the piano playing. They crept to the piano, shotguns at the ready, just to see a mouse running up and down the piano. The Button family, my grandmother on my dad's side, originated in France. The immigrant's name was Count Henry de la Buttoneux de la Monte. He was a wealthy upper-class Frenchman who married a common girl. Once moved to America, he anglicized his name to Button. The class conflict caused the couple to sail in 1825 to Quebec, Canada. This following the War of 1812, Quebec was an important French port in Canada. His sons settled in the Lake Geneva, Wisconsin area. Their grandsons settled in 1848 in Bruce, Wisconsin, where the Button family still lives and my father was raised. According to my great-uncle Carlisle, Alexander and Ezra Button worked on the Erie Railroad. When they were finished, they were paid a large lump sum. They were disappointed with Detroit, so Ezra and his older brother, Alexander, took a train from New York to Milwaukee, but they missed the stop and ended in Chicago. From there, they walked to Lynn Township, Wisconsin, where Alexander built a spectacular house shown in a Chicago magazine. The house was kept until in 1970 it was torn down. Ezra went into the Continental Army for his brother as a sharpshooter. The Bergman family originated in West Prussia. The family left in the 1880s because of religious persecution. During the 1880s in West Prussia, Bismarck was putting stress on the Polish and Polish sympathizers. The 1880s was the largest movement of Germans. They were mostly skillful workers and brought over traditions such as the Christmas tree. The son, Carl Otto Bergman, ran away to Tulare, California. The family still lives in the area, farming and running a dairy.
In the book Remembrances, written by my grandpa Rush Bergman, he writes, I was born under an oak tree on December 19, 1909 at 5 a.m. in a tent. At least that is what my dad had me believe. Dad always said that Dr. Blodgett was more drunk than sober when I arrived, so he had to tie the cord himself.
The inheritance. The Bergman family gained most of their inheritance from the death of a young lawyer in 1943. The lawyer was named Mr. Lamon and would stay every summer in the Bergman farm to collect the tenant farmers' taxes. He became friendly with the Bergman family during the 1920s. The Roaring Twenties was full of corruption, and a gang, in the process of robbing Mr. Lyman, killed him. In his will, he had left his land to the Bergmans, who eventually farmed the land. They gained most of their wealth from Mr. Lyman. The migration of the Tibbits family is mostly unknown, but Constance Cole, married to Edgar Albert Tibbits, came over from Ilford, England in 1901. They moved to Oregon. Their son, Douglas Edgar Tibbits, and Bethel Ann had my father, Tim Tibbits. The story of Douglas's death from the account of my dad is that on October 4th, 1960, the military truck Douglas was driving on the Autobahn had steering wheel difficulties. It was known about the deuce and a half that at high speeds the steering wheel would lock. Unfortunately, this happened when the men hit a bit of slippery cement. They skidded and caught on fire due to the chemicals they were carrying as a training called war games to destroy classified documents if needed. Douglas had trauma to the head and 100% of his body burned. My dad was only 2 months old. The man along with Douglas also died. The Perksen family came over from Moldegunden, Denmark in 1887 to avoid conscription into the Kaiser's army. They settled in Chicago selling milk. The daughter, Bernice, moved into the Bergman family and moved to California. She is my great-grandmother on my mother's side. The tradition continued by the Perksens is the recipe of Evelskivers. The secret family recipe continues from my grandmother to my mother to me. We use a crochet hook to flip over the Evelskivers. Quoting from my great-grandmother Bergman, she summarizes the story of my family in The American Dream. In some ways, the story of the Bergman family settling in Tulare County in the 1900s is an exemplar of the American dream. Penniless immigrants came from Germany and Switzerland to Wisconsin and Indiana. Their children moved west to California and managed to scrape together a few dollars for a down payment on some virgin land. By working hard and living frugally, they gradually purchased equipment, building up the soil, start a dairy, raise a family. Those children grow up and raise the children close by, all thanks to God.